Okay, hey everybody, welcome back, and this is we're Lost Some Chips again.
Yeah,
here we are.
I don't know what episode we're on.
I don't know either, but
as usual, we had quite an ordeal bringing this to your ears.
There were some audio difficulties.
Yeah,
and somehow I got them figured out, but I'm not sure how.
He doesn't know how, but he worked hard on the technical side, and Viviana and I just took naps.
Yep, that's basically what happened.
Yeah.
And but anyways, here we are.
And did it. And by we, I mean Paul.
That's right. Well, it was frustrating.
Yeah. Before we jump into stuff, how's everyone doing?
Pretty good.
Everyone's good.
Great.
Yeah.
What cool things happened in your life since last time?
I don't want to talk about it.
Okay, nothing cool happened in Viviana's life.
Yeah.
Is it cool or not cool?
Yeah, am I okay? That would sound good. Okay, I'm not leaning in.
You're probably fine.
Okay, so I reached a new milestone in my new hiking hobby. So, by the way, I've gotten into hiking over the last few months because it's one of the only ways I can get consistent social interaction. There's a group of friends that goes hiking every Wednesday. Anyway, that's been good, but it's also revealed the frailties of my human body, specifically my bad knee. But this past Wednesday, I successfully finished a hike without my knee hurting because I ended my hike early.
Okay. I was on that same hike. And
that's right.
I didn't have to stop, but I like to call your knee a bum knee. Anyways. Yeah, I started hiking too. I went on that same hike.
That's right.
That was good. Social interaction. Right. Also wrote...
And exercise.
One of my friends is having a baby shower, and she invited guys and girls to. It's like a Zoom baby shower, and she wanted us to talk about our favorite childhood books on there. And I had a hard time thinking of a childhood book that was like my favorite. I mean, I still remember their names. I remember some books I really liked as a child, but I don't remember their names. And so I wrote a childhood book instead for the child. It's about a tardigrade. It's called Tommy Tardigrade. It's
pretty good.
It's scientific and nerdy. It's for the discerning child. Anyways, that's what's new with me.
Yeah. Also, the other day I flirted with a cute Uruguayan woman who I learned in the course of conversation is 10 years older than me, which I would never have been able to tell. And I'm in my late 30s, but she looked great. She was very nice, and nothing is going to happen there.
Anyways.
But I still got it.
Yeah, you do. Okay, well, let's jump right into our topic.
Is that awkward? I shared it because I thought it'd be funny. Maybe it wasn't. All right.
It wasn't too bad.
Okay, well, that's good.
So along those lines, breakups.
Yes. So we're talking about breakups. Specifically, we're talking about an article from a long time ago, but with still relevant information. It's by Gawain Wells. I don't know if he was a professor at BYU at the time he wrote this, but he was when I was at BYU. But the article's titled "Breaking Up Without Going to Pieces." And yeah, full disclosure, we didn't realize this earlier, but this article was from 1982, before Viviana was alive. No comment about whether Bryce and Paul were alive. But I think it's got a lot of good insights. I think the principles are sound. I think the applicability has shifted a lot since then, just because of what dating looks like now. Especially in a pandemic. But yeah. Anyway, I thought the title should have been called "Diagnosing Problems in Your Dating Relationships," because that's really the thrust of it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he is talking about like how to break up well, but he's also talking about
why relationships don't work.
Yes, and why breakups are even necessary. Anyway, I thought it was a good article.
Sir, full disclosure, I didn't actually read the article.
Oh my goodness!
But
we pause right there.
So,
you gotta tell us.
But
Okay, Paul is great on the technical side. He's really great on the technical side.
And usually I'm pretty good about reading the stuff too.
I don't know why he didn't read this one.
No, it was just like a super.
We should edit this out.
I think it'll be funnier.
Okay, well, 2/3 of us have read it.
Yeah, but I was reading other stuff. So I did read Viviana's outline, and then I was like thinking about some other stuff that I had read about previously, and so I kind of went and read that stuff. So I got kind of distracted and didn't read there.
He read his own material. It's okay.
Kind of, yeah. That's basically what happened.
I'll give you a B-.
Okay.
I'll give you a B. I'll give you a B.
Wait till the podcast is over and then grade me.
Okay. Well, I'll give you a pre-B.
Okay. Sounds good. But yeah, so I'll rely on you guys to talk about the article itself.
I also agree with my partner Bryce here. I did like the article, and I think it has a lot of really good, pertinent information that is just general good breakup information. Good
relationship
information. I really appreciated a lot of what he had to say. I thought it was great.
Yeah.
But as we were talking, Bryce and I, we were talking about how, for whatever reason, dating has changed. The landscape of dating has become a lot more different because of social media. We know what a person's profession, what their height, we know all sorts of information because of social media prior to actually meeting them.
Yeah.
And so it does change the landscape of dating.
Yeah, because I thought, breakups and dating in general have just changed in the timing and the frequency for our demographic, at least, which is, we're outside the haven of YSA years. We're educated single professionals.
Sure, if you don't know what that is, that's young single adult. That's in our church, right? That's 18 to 31, right?
That's
30,
right, or to 30, 30.
Single.
I think nowadays so much of it is front loaded, kind of like you're saying, Viviana, that we know a lot more information up front, like on a dating app, for instance, or on Facebook. And so some of the what used to be a natural process of evaluation in the dating world, is like, we're able to do that up front immediately, which there's pros and cons to that. But, I just think it's different.
Sure, you're dealing with a very truncated set of information when we do that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, because someone's dating profile it can give you kind of a general idea, but it's definitely not as big of a picture as you would get interacting with someone several times.
Yeah. But for instance, like on Mutual, the premier LDS dating app, you can see where they're from, their height,
their profession, if they served a mission,
and commonly in the open response part, you say if you've been married, if you have kids. Commonly, you don't have to, but if you're even active in the church, a lot of people on there are not active in the church or aren't even members, or they're fake profiles.
A lot. Sounds like you have an experience about that. Just kidding. No.
I have a friend who thinks a lot of them are fake, and I think only some of them are fake. But
I don't think I found any when I was on there, but I could be wrong.
It's hard to know. Because fake profiles, if it's a robot, it will ghost you. But real people ghost you too. by which I mean ignoring. I mean, I know like technically ghosting is like when you're doing a breakup and you don't communicate. But I'm using ghosting more generally for just being ignored by people, which is very common on dating apps.
But this doesn't make sense. The robot would be on there for some purpose, right? What is its purpose?
I don't know.
Its purpose is just to ghost you. Usually it's to try to get some money out of you or something, right?
Yeah. You're right. I do wonder what the purpose is.
There used to be another one called LDS Link Up, and I would get these random connections from girls in Russia, and they clearly weren't LDS, but on the profile it would say stuff like, they would talk about their religion or whatever, like they were trying to sound LDS, I think, but it was clear that they weren't.
Yeah.
Anyways.
So you're probably right. There's probably not too many robots. It's mostly just flaky people who don't check the app much or don't like you. Anyway, We're on a tangent here.
Yeah.
Kind of it is a tangent. Anyway, yeah, I thought it was a good article. Why are you raising your eyebrows at me?
I'm not.
She did.
I'm trying to figure out, like, okay, where are we going?
So am I.
Okay, awesome.
There was something else I was gonna say about this, just off the bat, but I can't remember what it was. So never mind. Let's get into it.
If you wanna, I will say it up front here. If you, one of my favorite podcast episodes ever was This American Life episode called "Breaking Up," and it's it's not the main host doing it. It's I can't remember what her name is. It does it, but anyways, she tries to write a breakup song with the help of Phil Collins. And so that's why I had this Phil Collins song in my head earlier, because it's playing a bunch of cheesy Phil Collins songs during the whole episode. And what she talks about is like when you're after a breakup, like you're just totally embracing the cheese, because you're just like, you want to listen to all that cheesy.
You want to wallow in your feelings.
Kind of.
Gawain Wells would probably have something to say about that.
I bet.
You don't know because you haven't read it.
I don't, but I've heard that name.
Yeah.
Well, he did talk about a person who had, I guess, after they had broken up with someone, they continued to loop the same song over and over and over in their apartment. And then one day they came out of their room and they said, okay, I'm done. This relationship is over. I'm moving on. This person's not going to love me any longer, And I was actually thinking about that as well, how it's kind of a funny thing that, there's so many different types of love songs, but there's so many different types of songs, period. But like, I would say maybe 70% of songs have to do with love. And I like half of those, or more than half of those, I feel like there's more like pessimistic, sad breakup songs that are all about like, let us work on, like, let's just talk about how difficult love is, right? Or they,
most Taylor Swift songs.
Yeah, let's just talk about how miserable I can be because you're not in my life anymore. That's kind of like the motto.
Although, to be fair to Taylor Swift, I don't know many of her songs, but I know some of them, and one of them is about how they're never getting back together.
Oh yeah, there you go.
And that one's a little more empowering, I guess.
Yeah, some of them are more like, you were a loser the whole time, and I just realized it now.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay, I know what the thing is I was going to say, which is that the whole concept of breakups, it's not outdated, but it's less relevant. Breakups in this sense, where that Wells is talking about in this article, where there's actually been a relationship that developed. Maybe it wasn't a sufficiently good relationship to progress to marriage, but it's assuming that marriage was the goal, which isn't, we can't assume that in our demographic anymore, unfortunately, at least at any given moment, right? At any given moment, a person that might be the very, very, very last thing they want in their life or even want to think about. Okay. But anyway, just the whole concept of breakups, from an existing relationship is less relevant than it used to be, because so much of dating is,
not really relationships.
It's pre-relationships. So it's like pre-breakup, it's like, me messaging some girl that I matched with, and maybe she'll respond to me, maybe she doesn't. If she doesn't, then that was a pre-breakup. If we exchange a few messages and then we stop talking, then that's a pre-breakup. And those are very common.
Yeah. It's more, you're saying that nowadays people deal with more rejection, whereas in the past it might have been a little bit more of a breakup because you took Susie on a date 5 times,
and of course, obviously there was this kind of thing existed back in the days as well, right? There's tons of, it's not like you went out with anyone immediately when they asked you. But I think that's much more the norm now, where we rely so much more on technology, where, again, in our demographic, we're busier. We're trying to keep our lives full with activities and stuff, and we don't always keep up on our apps. And maybe that's like our backup plan anyway, so we're not giving our full attention to it. It's kind of like our wish list, and so we're ultra picky about, what happens there. And anyway, so all more complicated than it used to be.
So our first topic is about what is a rejection really? What does it mean to be either broken up with or rejected?
Yeah.
And what does that really mean? And one of the things, I was talking with a friend this week, And he said something really poignant. It was something along these lines that whatever happens in a rejection, we have to be careful not to label ourselves as a reject. So you're just being rejected. You're not a reject. It doesn't mean that you're secondhand material. He said that people have a tendency to label themselves or overreact, when things don't turn out quite like how they would like to have them turn out. And I don't know, I think that's a really interesting idea. I was talking to Paul earlier about how, if you look back at our ancestors, if they got rejected, that meant, we're talking about our earliest ancestors. If they got rejected from the pack, the cavemen, or who knows,
Whatever.
the earliest or the earliest,
hunter-gatherers.
Yes. So if they got rejected from their pack, that meant their livelihood, because that, I mean, you can't survive on your own if you don't have a clan.
Yeah, there's a reason why in the Lehi's family, for all their discord, Laman and Lemuel never said, "That's it, we're going off on our own expedition," which would have made things a lot easier, I think, for both parties. But they didn't, because you'd die in the wilderness.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Except for when they actually started having families, and then they separated.
That's true. Well, and they were in the promised land, and they had space and the opportunity. Yeah, because they became more agrarian.
Sure.
Anyway.
There's a podcast I was talking about.
Until the Lamanites started becoming plunderers. Anyway, go on.
Yeah, like the robbers.
Just less agrarian.
Sure, I know. I've heard some stuff that talks about from an evolutionary biology perspective, like Viviana was talking about. Some scientists think that we developed such a strong negative reaction to breakups because people that actually got cast out of society died. And so if you somehow found a way to like not get cast out, and just get along with everybody, make things work, then you're more likely to survive.
So there's an incentive to not be an outcast.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nowadays we cater to it, right? It's like, be your own thing, be as weird as you want to be.
Yeah, kind of be independent kind of stuff,
Again, pros and cons, but
yeah, sure. So
that makes sense. I mean, the thing about evolutionary biology is that you can always mentally gymnastics your way into any sort of argument there. But that being said, that makes sense what you said.
Yeah,
right? But
I think so.
I honestly just think that, sometimes the breakup is inevitable. Sometimes there's like no reason and any reason why someone might break up with you or reject you. And it's just an inevitable process of life, and not to say that you shouldn't feel bad, but it's part of life. You're gonna get rejected.
True.
One way or the other. If it's not a job offer, it's someone breaking up with you. If it's not that, like you things will happen in your life where you will be rejected. But I think it's really important for people to have a very strong sense of self. Because if they don't even, if you don't believe in your own worthiness, then I think it creates so many more problems when you're going through any sort of rejection.
Yeah, it's hard because it's like there's no one else, there's no other place to point blame kind of thing. So I think that's our natural tendency is to be like, well, they broke up with me, it's me. Like that Seinfeld episode where George is like, and she says, "It's not you, it's me." And George gets really mad. It's like, "Don't say that. It's me. It's definitely me."
It's definitely me. Yeah.
Kind of thing. And it's like, if you're the person being broken up with, then I mean, it's already hard enough to be the person doing the breaking up. You feel like a jerk.
Yeah.
You're like, you don't want that person.
In some cases, they are the jerk.
In some cases, you are the jerk. And
usually not.
You don't want that person to feel all the pain and whatever, but you're just not feeling it, and you have to be honest with them, But then when a person does that to you, you just feel it's hard. It's natural to feel really bad about it.
Yeah.
So I was looking at some of these. Oh, did I cut?
Well, I was just going to say, in addition to that, Gawain Wells talks about how so many times, like, when people break up, people feel the need to for whatever reason, they see that time as a time to, just let me just feel hurt. Let me really, like he says it's okay to go through the grieving process, but he says often breakups are a very healthy process of the selection process of courtship,
Yeah.
And, it doesn't do good for us to criticize or denigrate the other person, because he says that that's a way of running away from our reality. He says that bitterness is never the solution. And he says that pity parties are actually a way of hurting ourselves. And just like some people tend to dwell on, oh, what did I not do? Or, what did I do? But he says that that's actually a way to keep your wounded feelings alive. And it's just not helpful. And I think that goes back to I think it was Aristotle who said, if you don't know what is true, focus on what is helpful. And
Aristotle said that. Okay.
Or I don't know.
Because I know
that's Socrates.
That's a maxim in the mental health world, or maxim is the wrong word, but it's a common question to work with your clients. If they encounter some unpleasant idea, the question is it true? And whether or not it's true, is it also helpful to think about it? Yeah.
Yeah. So, anyway, it might be total, a person might feel like, okay, yeah, it is true that someone broke up with me, but at the same time, you dwelling on everything that you did or did not do, I think sometimes it's just not even helpful.
Yeah.
So it's just best not to. I think it's really important for people to practice compassion, and that's another thing that Gawain Wells talks about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's some science backing this stuff up too. The stuff that I did read,
no, it's good. It's good. You definitely did prepare. Didn't read the article.
It was all about brain science of breakups and stuff. Because I had heard this. I can't remember where I had heard this, but some studies that talked about how they do these functional MRI scans on people's brains. They did these scans on people's brains when they're in romantic love, and then different stages of when they're after a breakup, and then they compared them to other fMRI studies of other people in other situations and stuff. And what they found was that your brain reacts to a breakup about the same way it does to being very hurt physically, very badly, like a broken bone or being burned.
Wow.
Which makes it seem like your brain really doesn't want you to break up. And they say that it's also so when you're in a relationship, your brain's spitting out all these good chemicals, right, the dopamines or whatever, and the part of your brains that are active indicate that your brain is rewarding you, and it's also the part of your brain that does social judgment is less active, so that you can it facilitates your being blind to your partner's defects, which is, I don't know, I was thinking of some song when I was reading this stuff, I'm trying to remember what it is, but it's, you kind of feel like the person can do no wrong sometimes for a little bit when you're in this romantic, butterfly mode kind of thing. Yeah, and then anyways, when you break up, you have this super bad pain, and it's it's tough. But I was thinking about this because you guys were talking about people have a tendency to kind of stay in that, and some of the science behind that is that it's just similar to addictions. You're addicted to the positive feeling, and the positive hormones and the dopamine and stuff that your brain is giving you.
Yeah.
And when you go when you're broken up with a person and you see their picture and you think about them, you drive by the places where you used to go and you think about it, it feels kind of sad, but it also gives you some of these dopamines and stuff. It also, there's actually a biochemical thing going on where your body kind of likes that because it's all right. Even it's similar when you're in addiction, the drug's not good for you, but your brain thinks it wants it.
Well, so you're saying love is a drug.
Well, I wonder about that interpretation, though, because, it depends. If you keep driving by that house for months on end, that's an addiction. If it's something, it's just a phase that is temporary, then, I think that's probably healthy.
Yeah, I don't think
it's a way to, ease yourself out of it.
Sure. I don't think they were saying that it's like there's analogizing it to an addiction, saying it's similar, you know.
Yeah.
But they were kind of pointing out that like if you want to move on faster, you gotta stop feeding your brain those dopamines. You're still gonna think about the person, but if you like try to make a concerted effort, like, well, maybe I'm not gonna like go look through all the pictures as much, or not drive by all those places and stuff, then you might get past them faster. You know, your brain might get off of the dopamines or whatever. You know, get off the hormones.
You know, I think another strategy is also in tandem with what you're saying. It's is what they use in emotional intelligence, and it's like whenever you're experiencing a very negative emotion, you just let that negative emotion kind of sit with you. You don't let it hijack your whole mental being, but you let your negative emotions sit with you, and it's almost as if you kind of like welcome them into your lobby of subconscious, whatever that looks like. And you just let them sit with you, and what you do is you tell them, okay, you could stay as long as you like, or you can leave whenever you'd like. But sometimes I think, so this is something behind emotional intelligence science. They say that when you try so hard to push your emotions away, you will find that those emotions keep, surging back into keep, coming back into your life. And so sometimes it's just better to just allow yourself to just grieve with the process, and but also allow yourself to be just allow yourself to see yourself as a human. Like, I'm a human. I am going through this difficult time. The funny thing about feelings is often they come and they go. In Spanish, there's a different verb to be that we use with the verb, with any sort of feeling. And it's temporary to be. And then there's another to be. There's another to be that is a more permanent.
Estar and ser.
Yeah, and so anything that's with any type of emotion in Spanish is always used with the temporary verb of to be, or helping verb of to be. So I think, I don't know, I just think of emotions in that way. They come and they go, and rejection, it's life.
And you can't control your emotions directly. Like,
not directly.
Yeah, not directly.
Yeah.
You can't,
dot.
Yeah, You can't on demand I'm gonna be happy now.
Yeah.
I think talking about the I like this conversation. I think there's a difference between letting ourselves feel the emotions naturally that we're feeling, and then kind of purposely, maybe unintentionally to some extent, but extending how long those emotions last for weeks and months and months.
Sure.
As we do things that probably don't help us to move on.
Yes.
It's good to not hide from the emotions, but also good to do other healthy things too.
Exactly.
And keep your life intact and,
Exactly. So I think we definitely want to talk about emotional intelligence. It's a topic I've said many times we'll talk about someday, and we still will someday. But one of the core elements of emotional intelligence is about managing your emotions, right? And you could say that, indulging those emotions or ignoring them completely and just distracting you, those are attempts to manage your emotions. They're not probably sustainable and healthy ways. But it's too easy. Emotions are an important part of being human. They serve a lot of important social and biological and psychological functions. But one of the challenges of being human, I think, is to learn how to manage them effectively rather than to be enslaved by them. And you only need to go on Facebook or whatever any social media, to find so many examples of people being ruled by their emotions. There's a saying if you don't heal from whatever cut you, then you're going to bleed on people who didn't cause it, or something like that, right? Wow. And you see that all the time in the world. And so I think adapting our behaviors, in accordance with our emotions, that's a very important growth process for humans.
I think it's good to do things that are sometimes people, well, so that's what Gawain Wells says, is that, for whatever reason, sometimes people view this time of a breakup to, focus on all the things that they didn't do or that they did do, that were right or wrong in the relationship. But he says, it's a very cruel way to treat ourselves. He says, that it's really important to, dig deep and to journal write and he even says to find solace in God, even if you're really, really struggling with, because some relationships I think are going to be a little bit difficult, to get over some situations, and other situations might not be as difficult to get over someone, but it's all going to be okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely can relate to that. I definitely got like a whole journal that's probably entirely dedicated to one girl.
Wow. Well, and see,
after we broke up.
See, and this is
it was
go ahead.
complicated too because go ahead. What are you gonna?
No. Finish.
It was just complicated because all my friends in Arizona, they were going through this with me, kind of thing. But this was such a hard situation. I didn't actually want to break up with her. It's hard for me even to talk about this because a lot of people don't get this and won't get it. Yeah. But I felt like it wasn't right, even though I kind of wanted to keep going forward. Yeah. And to me, this felt like a revelation and kind of thing. And but it was like I still wanted it, and she still wanted it, kind of thing. And it was just super hard, Yeah. And
very hard.
But it was a time when I did feel like I drew closer to God. I'm not sad that I went through that. It certainly was challenging, and but yeah.
Yeah. See, this is the real stuff of life. These relationships. Dating and marriage are not incidental to our mortal experience. It's like an enormous part of what God wants us to experience here. This is me getting doctrinal, obviously, but it's not just a couple's relationship to fulfill emotional needs, although it does have that component for sure. This is like the vehicle by which God helps us. One of the most, it's not the only, but it's a significant component of God teaching us to become like Him. And this is part of why I think people's expectations are so misguided, or why there's a temptation to have our expectations way off, is that it's a temptation to want everything perfect in a relationship and to expect that. And, they're looking for an escape from the troubles of mortality. And the reality is, no, a good, healthy relationship is going to be good and healthy, but it's also going to have things that really stretch you, and that's by design. And so, I think when things don't go well, it's for sure something that the Lord is willing to allow, because, like it says in Doctrine and Covenants, all these things shall give thee experience and shall be for thy good. And I think it's the same way with breakups. It's with that way with relationships that don't work, and it's also that way with relationships that are in the process of working, right?
Yeah. Well, I think it's kind of like that attitude that Joseph B. Worthland said, come what may and love it, which is really hard. Yeah. They just broke up with me. Love that, but no, it's like really love it, love, find joy in the journey. Yeah. It's not about, dating is a platform. It's not an end unto itself. Yeah. Like you are not just here to go on date after date after date with you are here to discover joy. Man is that he might have joy, right. Like that is why you exist. Yeah. You're here to have joy. And so go and seek it boldly,
Yeah. And, one of the most important features of the gospel plan is that we're able to become different people, right? It's not like we're just the same people and we're given some assistance here and there to weather things, but then we remain fundamentally the same person. Again, that's not God's plan. That's not what the gospel of Jesus Christ is about. The gospel of Jesus Christ is about the power of the atonement changing people, so they become different, so they become stronger. The New Testament, there's a lot of parables about becoming profitable and unprofitable servants. And I like this because I'm into stock trading and investing and stuff, but and just business in general is interesting. But in a way, God's kind of a businessman too. He's in the business of bringing to pass the immortality and eternal life of his children. And our profitability in that process is different for all of us, right? But we tend towards the unprofitable side, that he's only putting resources into us, and we're not necessarily bringing forth much fruit. Now, obviously, there's lots of people who you could say are profitable servants, who have just advanced to the point where they're bringing about so much good, and they become such strong, godlike people. Yeah. Anyway, go on. Yeah, I'm rambling.
I don't know though. I feel like I talked about this in a talk one time back in Arizona, and I called it like the parable of the unprofitable servants. I can't remember what it was, but it was like if you were like a lender and you were like, look, because I think in that parable, like that part of the Book of Mormon that talks about King Benjamin, I think talks about the unprofitable servants. I think. Like, really, the only profitable servant is the Savior in that
Yeah, I mean,
scenario.
it depends on how we're defining profitability. I mean, you look...
Like, if you define it in terms of just
like
salvation...
perfection or,
just salvation.
Never breaking any commandments, then, there's only Jesus.
Yeah, just the ability to get back to God. And so if it was like the lender saying, like, I'm going to lend out a bunch of money to these... I'm going to lend out money to this one guy who's going to make more profit than all the other people who are all just going to be a loss.
Yeah. But I think the principle is that God is trying to turn us into self-sufficient.
Yeah, yes, we become profitable down the road.
That's right.
Maybe not in this life even. But,
yeah, maybe not. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. President Nelson.
It depends on.
I mean, he's needed the grace of Christ, in the same way as everyone else. But at the same time, I look at his works now, and I'm like,
that's true.
He's full on giver. He's not a taker, other than he needs to eat and sleep, and get some clothes dry cleaned every now and then. I don't know. Anyway, we're a little off topic, but it was good tangent.
No, but I think you're right. Like marriage to me and family life to me seems like the PhD program of life.
Yeah,
it's like sure you don't have to enroll for a PhD program either, but you do experience growth and you become a different, more well-rounded person if you do, kind of thing. I'm not saying everybody needs to get a PhD, but you know what I'm saying. Sure.
You definitely are polished in different ways than you might not have otherwise been, if you had stayed single the rest of your life.
I think in the most important ways, like, he knew used to talk about, like, he had some dream one time where he'd done really poorly in this math class. And he had some dream, and it seemed initially like it was a nightmare because he was like in heaven. They were like, "All right, now you gotta learn that math." You never
Those are the only kind of dreams I have about school. Are nightmares.
Yeah, me too. The dreams
where I forgot to drop that class.
Yeah, exactly. I have
Anyway,
those too. Or like getting called on a mission, and you're like, "What?"
Getting called on a second mission.
Like,
I have that nightmare
I had
too.
that one too.
Shouldn't I focus on getting married? And I was like taking a faith, but anyways, like he knew he had this dream, and they were like, "Oh, now you gotta learn that calculus you never figured out." And he was like, "Oh, great." And he was all worried about it. But then it was like he just understood it like super fast. It was like super easy. And then he woke up from this dream, and he said after that, like when the scriptures talk about intelligence, like we're here to like gain intelligence, and the more intelligence you gain in this life, so much more the advantage you have in the life to come, kind of thing. He always interpreted that to be not like book smart intelligence, but to be like learning how to repent and how to forgive. Like the character stuff. That's the stuff that you have to learn by experience. Yeah.
Well, and can I say something else? It reminds me of the I think it's in the Sermon on the Mount where Jesus said something like, "Unto him that hath shall be given more, that which more, and unto him that hath not shall be taken away even that which he doth have," or whatever. But I think that's a very interesting kind of concept that that
we don't want to believe.
Like we want to continue growing, like whether it's like we're going to continue growing in learning about relationships, learning about ourselves, learning. The people who are learning are always learning, and then the people that just don't want to learn, they just stay like really, really stagnant, and it's a very interesting phenomena like that happens, and it like even the people, there's some people that are just always going on dates, and then some people that are just never going on dates, and I think a lot of it has to do with your mindset and the type of person that you are. I think some of it has to do with that. I think it's a little bit easier to date if you actually do like yourself and if you're not fighting yourself,
sure.
you know. But some people,
and
you know, have been
habits.
fighting.
Yeah,
Some people have been fighting themselves their whole entire
that's
life,
right.
you know.
That's right. Yeah, the good insights. We should keep going. Okay, so next one in the remaining 20 minutes. Why do some people? Okay, we'll keep this one short. Why do some people feel blindsided when they're told by their partner that they want to break up?
Sure. Well, so I think I talked a little bit about this earlier when I was talking about how your brain
right.
your brain wants you to stay in that relationship, and so in order to facilitate that, it helps you be blind to their faults. you know, you're less judgmental and stuff about them.
So I think that's a biological component for sure. I also think there's some just straightforward people and social skill problems, relationship skill problems, really, like lack of communication, lack of empathy, which actually, when we're talking about emotional intelligence, one of the categories involves empathy and like knowing what you can do to manage the emotions of others. So that empathy is part of that. Communication, understanding the other person, effectively resolving problems as opposed to just avoiding conflict. I mean, I actually think of divorce when I think of this, and sometimes from personal experience, not in my own life, but lives of those I'm close to. Actually, yeah, in my own life too, like where I'm blindsided by people's divorce decisions. Obviously, not my own marriage, but
you're blindsided by them, but maybe they aren't.
It's
right?
like,
you know,
at least being. I mean, I think divorces tend to be preventable. It's not necessarily something both people are willing to put forth the effort to prevent, but I think generally they're preventable.
Sure.
They shouldn't always be prevented, but let me just finish my thought. Typically there's some sort of hidden dysfunctions in the relationship that have been eroding that relationship for a long time. And they tend to be things like effective communication, working through conflict and understanding the other person, I think. Go ahead, Paul.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I was just going to say that one of the coping mechanisms that I think we do, and even the stuff that I was reading about, like the brain science was saying, can be a good thing. Like that after when you're during your breakup or whatever, after the breakup has occurred, that one of the things that can help you to get through it faster is just to try to think logically and like think through like, well, what are some of the reasons why this maybe wouldn't be the best relationship,
Yeah.
I think we tend to do that. I think you see that sometimes in divorces too. After the fact, we're like, well, this is why it was really bad,
Yeah.
And to some extent, maybe that helps us cope with the pain of the breakup, that like, well,
For sure.
here's all the bad stuff about it.
Oh, phew. This breakup was not all bad.
Dodge the bullet,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
I know I did that one time. There was this person that I was like, wait, remember, he's really hot, Viv, but he's also really crazy.
I've thought the same thing about women.
Oh,
she's really
great.
hot. She's crazy, but she's very hot.
yeah.
I'm glad it didn't work out, except for the hotness part. But overall, glad.
That's right. We just have those aren't mutually exclusive.
Can we move on? Oh, go on.
We can. Go ahead.
Okay, so he talks a lot in there, and this is why I think it was kind of misnamed, but he talks a lot about these common like pitfalls in our relationships. I just listed a few here, but he talks about, and basically these are things that like, hey, you need to avoid these things, and you definitely don't want to get married, commit to someone where these are, active in your relationship, because you're setting yourself up for disaster there. But things like manipulating the other person, so you can feel more secure in the relationship. If you are being manipulated, you might recognize it by a feeling of heaviness and undue obligation that's been placed on you. I've experienced that. I'm sure I have caused that as well in the past, but I've also experienced it in recent memory. And again, if that's something you're experiencing, that's something you need to talk about in the relationship. Don't just pretend it's not there. Okay. He also talks about the motives. You want to have the right motives. If it's to get back at someone, if it's a rebound relationship, that might not be a good idea. If it's, to prove to the other person I'm still fundamentally lovable. That's, that might be not a good motivation. If it's to compensate for your own weaknesses and utter loneliness, well, the loneliness part I get. and relationships do help combat loneliness, but you need to also make sure you like the person and they're a good person for you, right? It can't just be a Band-Aid solution to some fundamental existential crisis about your place in the world. And anyway, you have something to say.
I was just going to add, you were talking about how it's so important that relationship isn't forced, and that and that you're not, being revengeful. One of the things that I was thinking about is like, it's so important. You shouldn't be upset at another person because they don't see your value. If they don't see, all the ways that you can contribute to the relationship, you shouldn't be upset about that. And it's like, it's not your job to make them see what they should have seen.
Right. And I think, especially if we feel we have no other options, I think this is one of those like satanic lies that causes a lot of pain. It has for me until recent years when I've been better about combating it. But like the sense of despair, at least for me, this has been a common hang up that makes me bad at breakups, is that I feel like this is the one and only, even though I know rationally there's no one and only, but I feel like it's going to be so hard for me to find someone this good that like I'm clinging on to it. And, and this underlying dread that like, if this doesn't work out, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
It's hopeless, but I think if you perceive there are other opportunities, that you are able and willing to pursue, that helps a lot, actually.
Yeah. I think it's healthy not to put people on a pedestal, but also don't, everyone is a human. You're all mortals. You're all gonna, it's like the scripture in the Bible, in the Book of Mormon. Well, it's actually in the Bible as well. It says, "Who art thou that thou shouldst fear man who should die?" Like you shouldn't be, you shouldn't think so highly. You should be afraid of another human being. You should fear God because he's immortal. But you shouldn't be afraid of another man or another woman, or another person, because they're just as mortal as you are. They, they, barf and, they go to the bathroom.
Potty humor.
And
Potty comment by Viviana.
They do all sorts of things that you do, like they're not fundamentally better.
Comento de baño.
I don't know how we got there, but yes. Yeah.
Por Viviana.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah, by Viviana.
Yeah.
I think that, I can relate to that feeling too when you're going through a breakup and you're like, man, who am I going to date? And there's some of this is like reality too, because it is true that we grieve. And
it's okay.
It's not like we're getting more and more options the older we get. Like, in generally, I would say our options are narrowing to some extent. And our if you just straight up probability, your likelihood of getting married decreases as you get older. And so it's not like that. It's not like those are all untruths necessarily, but I would say like in our religious beliefs, right? We believe that like God isn't. We're all guaranteed all the blessings if we're obedient, and that means that we'll all live in family life if we're obedient, and we want that at some point. And for some people, that is going to happen in this life, and some people it isn't. Yeah. And we can certainly hang on to God's promises. Like, He keeps all His promises, but He doesn't deliver them on known timelines. Sure. And it's on His timeline, and it's also true that like if I'm going through a breakup and I had like some amazing connection with some woman, and but there were also bad things about the relationship. There were things that weren't that great. The next person I date, maybe those same issues aren't there, but the same feelings of super butterflies aren't there either, kind of thing. It's not. I kind of like you say, like, you can't. I've talked about this in another podcast, but where I feel like I kind of, in my mind, I have this hybrid person who has all the great qualities of everyone I've
Sure.
dated.
Oh, wow.
So, which is bad, I think.
Definitely don't exist.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's like going back to King Benjamin. He says, don't run faster than you have strength, like, especially if you're like, okay, I want to get married. And if you're like, oh, this is an amazing person, a superhuman, right? Like, I can't let this one go. But, you do. And that's okay to grieve. And you go through that. But really and truly, like, I don't think that God does things in a pressured, it's not like, oh, you have to get married, like, right this second. If not, it's the end of the world.
And I'm going to send you all this anxiety, because that's how I work, says God. Nope. He does not say that.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm going to send you intense discomfort and anxiety and negative thoughts. I mean, there are some cases where that happens.
Yeah, I'll put a caveat in
very,
here.
very specific, I think.
Yeah, pretty rare, I think, in my personal
But
life.
sometimes you're right. Sometimes it could be the case that, you do have to marry that person right away,
Sometimes.
I don't know.
Probably pretty rare.
I don't know, pretty rare.
But maybe. But I will say, like, it is true that you can mistake anxiety for revelation, but for sure, but in my case, like, I only feel like in like 2 dating relationships ever did I feel like I got any kind of guidance, and those were stop signs. And I never really felt like I got.
And those stop signs was primarily not in the physiological experience of anxiety.
It was a lack of, in one case though, it took me a long time to figure it out because I wasn't sure if it was that or something else. And I even thought, like, because what I felt, in the end, what I determined what I felt was a lack of peace.
Yep.
But what, at the time, it was hard for me to understand what exactly that was. And I remember even talking to a bishop about it and being like, I don't know what I'm feeling. And, he was saying, like, well, just make sure you can have the Spirit with you and you'll figure it out. And it took me a long time. I feel like it took, well, I mean, at least it took several weeks of feeling this. And then eventually I was like in an institute class and the lesson was about peace. And then it was very clear to me, like, that's what I'm not feeling right now.
Wow.
And then I turned around and I talked to her and was like, hey,
she was in that same class?
No.
Oh, okay. No, that would have been even perfecter.
But I went to her house after that class that night.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey, I gotta break up. Like, I just feel like that's what I'm feeling is like a piece. I had told her I was having these feelings. I didn't know what they were.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, there was a total flood of peace for like several days at least. But it's hard for me because even some of my good friends like didn't believe that and didn't get it. And
that makes total sense. Yeah.
So.
Well, good story. We need to hit a few more points in the remaining time.
Sure.
But just overall, like, I think having healthy motives is a prerequisite to having an honest relationship where you treat each other fairly, right? Yeah. Dishonesty makes it impossible, really, to be fair to each other.
Sure.
Fair and kind, Okay. So along the lines of what you're saying, though, I think one of the other pitfalls he talks about is misinterpreting spiritual guidance. Where people might mistake emotion for inspiration, or they can't even receive inspiration because the emotions are too strong, and what they want is more important to them than any outside, message.
So they put words in God's mouth.
Yes, that's right. Extrapolating that the Lord has promised specific big things when in reality He's maybe simply indicated approval for the potential of a relationship.
Yeah.
I think that's common. You hear that with some people who've been divorced where they feel very disillusioned because they're like, I felt what I thought was the Lord's approval for this marriage and it didn't work out. When I can guarantee you the Lord did not tell them explicitly, thou shalt marry this person, it shall all work out perfectly, regardless of what you and him do or you and her do. I'm sure he didn't say that.
Well, I think you're forgetting.
It's probably what they hoped. Yeah. He was saying.
The big part of that is, and the big part of the battle in heaven before we came to this earth that we believe was over agency.
Yep.
And it's like, this is how important agency is, because if we don't have our agency, then we can't act. Like, God didn't, maybe God said, yes, you can marry that person, and yes, it has a potential. Yeah. But he's not saying, he might not be saying, like, yes, you're going to stay married forever. Like, you still have to put in your work, you still have to, you reap what you sow,
Yeah. And see, and this is part of what explains Paul's and my differences on some of these issues is our biases are different. Because I'm lean more towards the side of we have agency, we have control over our circumstances. Not complete control. I would never say that. But whereas Paul believes more of the external influences, you know. And again, neither is completely true.
I don't think I actually believe that. But I think you've brought that up. I think what I just don't like unsolicited advice much. And so so when people bring things up, I think I tend to kick against them, even if I'm saying things I don't necessarily believe. I did the same thing with one of our roommates. But you talked about like internal versus external.
I just believe like even if our chances are getting worse, for example, you know, like we still we don't need to curl up and die from that. There's things we can do. But that's okay. Yeah,
sure. That's right. I think I would. Sure, but you probably don't disagree with my points either.
I don't.
And I don't really disagree with your points either.
Yeah.
I mean, you know.
Yeah.
So.
Anyway, okay. And then another pitfall, there's probably others he mentioned, but he's talked about allowing physical attraction to crowd out the working of, this is my words, but allowing physical attraction to crowd out the workings of the practical, rational brain. You know, which is...
Well, when you were talking earlier about, like, getting things that you think are revelation, you know, President Packard used to call something sinspiration.
Sinspiration? When something we wanted that's not righteous?
I think so, yeah. He's like...
That's a great term.
You know, I had a stake president who called it hormonal revelation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
He said hormonal revelation is not revelation, is what he said.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, my friend Stella, you know, you've met Stella.
Yeah.
Stella said something like, you know, if God only ever told me things that told me to do things that I already wanted to do, I would think that God is a figment of my imagination. Because it's a very convenient God, you know.
That's true.
Tells you all the things that you want to hear and doesn't rock the boat.
There's some of the most faith-promoting experiences are ones where it's something that you're like, I'm not creating this. I don't want this. Like, you know, where you receive... you know, a message that you don't want, you know, assuming you don't have schizophrenia.
Yeah, sure. And God's notoriously like the 11th hour, fourth watch God kind of thing too, you know, where it's like, it's important for you to go through hard things, you know, and to be delivered when He is ready to deliver.
Yeah, when you've really struggled with it.
Yeah.
You know? Anyway, very good points. I just want to hit some others before we run out of time.
Sure.
Go
ahead.
Okay, so Viviana had this question about what's the best way to let someone down kindly. I think this is very important. As a man, I suck at this, and I know many women who suck at this too. Yeah, because as a man, when I want to cut ties with someone, and if any of them are listening to this, I'm very sorry, and I recognize the error of my ways, but you know, I talk about ghosting sometimes like I'm the victim, but I've definitely been the ghoster. And I think in general, men are more likely, when a relationship breaks down, they're more likely to stonewall and just stop communicating. And that's often what I've done. It's not a good way to break up. You got to have an honest conversation. You know, and as well as where I failed is like on follow-up conversations where maybe they reached out about something and I just didn't give them enough time and attention when that's not very kind, you know. But on the other side, it's also not kind to not say no when you're not interested, and this is more common among women. I am convinced.
So Dr. Gawain Wells states that sometimes it's better that two people simply not get married.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's a really interesting.
And again, this is talking about in the framework where
you're
dating actually has the, and it's kind of different. Now we're predating to date. All right. But go on.
Pre-approval.
Yes, exactly. Go on.
No, but I mean, it's a variation still of the same kind of process.
That's right.
But
you could.
But
it's oftentimes fine for two people to not date.
Yeah, and he says that, you know what? That's sometimes the kindest thing that you could do, and is just say, you know what, I don't really see this going anywhere, or you know, it's just Because, I mean, what are you going to do? Like, what's the alternative? You ghost the person and, that person might be upset at you. I'm not saying that you should do things to win other people's approval, but you want to do things that he says, Dr. Gawain says, that you should show compassion. It should never be, love one another does not apply to every other situation minus a dating situation. No, it applies in every situation. Yeah. You should always love one another, and you should always, treat everyone like they're your brothers and sisters, because we really do believe that. They're your brothers and sisters that you might want to marry or not might not want to marry. But, it's important to be kind. That's the point.
Yes, and I just want to add, I have also been rejected very well by some women.
Yeah. Same here.
Yeah.
But you know what? Yeah. I also think that, the alternative is would you really want to continue dating someone that didn't want to continue dating you? And the reality is that most people would not want to, why would you want to date someone who wants, you want them to date you out of their own volition, but they don't want to date you?
See, the warped mind can take that and say, of course I want them to like me, so I'm not giving up on this. I'm going to try to manipulate them and change them into liking me, right? And
the other thing too is we're sometimes notoriously good at holding out hope, when it's something that we really want bad. And
yes.
I would guess that when you guys talk about your being rejected well, I've been rejected well also, and I would say the times when I've been rejected well, it's been very direct. And that's what's well about it, because they're just so clear and honest about it. Then I'm okay.
But not rude.
Not rude, but just direct and honest and brief. And not like they're giving all kinds of details. Well, here's all the things that I don't like about you.
Sometimes I've wanted those.
Yeah,
I usually do.
But you know what?
I need to let that go. I recognize I need to let that go.
But it's really and truly. Okay. If you want all the details, then.
Sometimes it's not healthy. I think sometimes it's not healthy.
It's not helpful. It might be true, but it's not helpful.
Well, I don't know though.
It depends on whether it's things they can change.
Exactly.
Right, exactly.
So that's why I want to know.
But even
I don't know.
But what if it's something that you can't change?
Yeah, if it's I just don't like your face. Right? It's I don't need to.
I've been rejected by 2 girls because of my height, and it's not like I can change my height, but. Right. I guess at least it helps me to see that bothers more girls than not,
Yeah.
But I was gonna say that even though normally I'm not usually an advocate of here are the reasons why, but you can still be direct and honest and say look, I'm just not feeling it.
Exactly.
And I do think that's much kinder.
Yes.
Than
being nice being nice subject and
hoping that
giving half-hearted responses.
Right, but guys do that too.
Yes,
and I'm guilty of that. It's hard because here's the thing. And we've talked about this a little bit before on a podcast on here. I remember though, because occasionally there's been a girl who's kind of asked me out, but I'm not really sure if it's a date because they're kind of vague and even that. And so sometimes in that kind of situation, if I know I don't like the girl, I'll just say, there's someone I'm interested in right now. I'm kind of pursuing.
Yeah.
So I'm not really available.
Which is
it's not all the way there.
It's a bit of and it's understandable.
The problem is that I don't know if they're saying that they're interested in me, and so I don't want to put them on the spot and say I'm not really interested in you.
You're and I wasn't interested in you.
Okay, good.
Yeah, get off your high horse.
Exactly. Yeah. Because I have done that, and then have girls come back and kind of bite me about that, and be like, "I just thought you."
But
well,
I think that's where loving yourself. If you're just a person, if you just love yourself and you believe in your worthiness and ability to receive love, you're not going to be so concerned with what if I'm going to hurt someone else's feelings? No, because you're going to be a little bit more direct. And I think. Also, if you are rejected because you just believe in your wholeheartedness, you believe in your complete worthiness of love, you just don't, you don't feel the need to kind of justify the relationship. You just kind of see it as I'm a red M&M and he obviously liked brown M&Ms, I don't know. Really, what's the opposite? What's the cost? Of you, like Dr. Gawain Wells says, he says, it's not even healthy, not at all, to go through all the things that you did or you didn't do,
Yeah.
during the relationship.
Right.
It's just not helpful. Yeah. It's not.
My friend Mark was really, when I was going through that really painful breakup in Phoenix, I did it the very worst wrong way in terms of hanging on, man. And I just kept, because I felt like, well, God told me to kind of.
That's exactly what he says. He says sometimes it's better to just completely part ways and not be friends.
That would have been better. I kind of.
That's why you should have read the article.
Oh, okay, but go on.
It wouldn't have helped me unless I
We've already teased him about that
10 years ago. But it could have read it 10 years ago because it's so old.
Go on.
But it's hard for me to not hang on and think like, well, maybe there was a problem, God, and maybe if that problem gets fixed, then maybe it's okay, right?
Yeah.
Or, there's so many unknowns.
And that's a reasonable question, right?
Right. Sure, I felt like
in that situation,
God was very patient in all of that. Like it wasn't. I felt like I could always come back and ask, like, is that still the answer, or is there anything different, kind of thing? And I felt like that was okay. But I also feel like I could contrast my reaction with my friend Mark, who also went through a breakup at about the same time, and now he just
severed ties
totally, entirely, and just got over a lot faster. You know? And for me, it took me a long time.
Yeah.
To hold on. Yeah. And I think I don't know, I think it's a process. It's going to be different with every relationship. It depends. There's a lot of speculation that, relationships are a lot like they're an emotional bond in the same way that, you emotionally bond with a parent or, I don't know. I don't know all the answers to that, but maybe one day we'll know all of the answers to why, a breakup was supposed to happen or why a breakup was not supposed to happen,
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Well, and I suspect most of God's answer will be, it was an agency issue. Wasn't it obvious? Like, I didn't have a dog in that fight. My whole intention for you guys down there was to learn to use your agency and make choices.
I think most of the time that's right.
Yeah. Okay, do we have any final thoughts? I have some.
Go.
Okay,
go for it.
So as far as like getting over relationships, like I said, I'm not perfect, but I have definitely gotten better from the past about this. And for me, a lot of being able to move on, I've been able to get better by learning how to manage my emotional pain, not as a helpless victim who feels he has no other hopes and therefore it's got to be this or I'm doomed and I'm just going to go cry in the corner and get depressed. So rather than that, learning to be more of an agent to whom God has given power and choice and accountability, who is capable of altering the course of my life through what I choose to do and think. That's been immensely helpful for me in just feeling more hopeful, being less thin-skinned, being able to get over not just like dating rejections, although they still suck, especially if I'm really interested in the girl, they still suck, but it's not as debilitating and even painful as it used to be for me. So, that's why I really think, faith and agency and accountability, to me, these seem like the lessons that are, we can't help but, we can fail to learn them in the dating process, but God wants us to learn them.
Yeah.
And that's why I think he's generally unwilling to give a person some freebie, wonderful marriage or relationship when they still don't take responsibility for things in their life, for instance. If they're entitled. I think God is wary to give them a big blessing that's just going to make them more entrenched in that. Anyway, that's my final thought. Agency, accountability.
My final thought about breakups is I think it's really important to have self-compassion. Just compassion, period. Compassion for yourself, compassion for the other partner. See them as human beings. Yeah. Really wish them the best. Leave them in love. That's what a friend of mine said this week. And I was like, wow, I'd really like that. Leave them in love, Practice self-love and self-care, even, allow those feelings that are negative, allow them to sit with you, but it doesn't mean you have to pay attention to them. Go out and do something.
Yeah.
Like you said, use your agency, develop a talent, go out there. If there's something, use this opportunity to do something different. If you've realized like, okay, I've gotten behind on my scripture study, or I've gotten behind on, this one talent or this one thing that I want to cultivate.
I'm not getting enough exercise.
Whatever it is, like use that time to make yourself the best version of yourself, but love yourself and love the people around you, because that is a mandate. Love one another.
It's true.
Okay, my final thoughts are, I agree with the statement, it's better to have loved and lost than to have never lost at all. I think that's
Never
accurate.
loved it all.
Than to have never loved at all, yeah. That none of our experience is wasted, and going through a breakup is not wasted experience. If nothing else, it gives you empathy towards other people who go through breakups and hard things. When I was going through one of my first hard breakups, I remember my sister-in-law telling me about one of her breakups and how just, at some point she just remembered having a day where she just naturally didn't think of the person. It just happened naturally. And that's kind of been my experience too, Time does heal all wounds. Well, it helps.
Helps you to forget
a lot
them?
of times. A lot of times it helps. It's just you're naturally going through the process. But it's definitely possible to lose love and then to love again. It's always possible to love again. So
Yeah.
That's my final thought.
Yes.
Good
don't give up.
thoughts. Good thoughts, guys. Okay.
Well, thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
And,
Adios.
I love how she said that so cheesy.
yeah.
Since Bryce, as we know, is never cheesy. Anyway, never. Okay, anyway.
I did it for you.
Oh,
Bryce.
thank you. Thank you. All right. Well, thank you for tuning in, everyone. Take care.
Thank you. We'll see you next time. Bye.
If you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing on iTunes or your favorite podcasting app and give us a rating. Thank you.